Walt Disney Imagineering in Glendale, California. Within the walls of this top-secret dream factory, Disney theme parks, resorts, and even cruise ships are conceived, designed, and developed by a very unique group of people called Imagineers. And I'm very proud to be one of them. Hello, I'm Marty Sklar, Executive Vice President, Imagineering Ambassador. I've been with Disney for 50-some years, and during that time, I've seen a lot of dreams come true. But that's what we do. We make the magic. It all started in 1952 when Walt Disney began to develop his idea for a new kind of family park called Disneyland. Walt's success, of course, had come from telling classic stories in animated films like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Fantasia. But he wanted to take his storytelling one step further by inviting his audience to literally step into the story. He wanted to create dimensional environments where his entertainment literally surrounded people. And that's what his idea for Disneyland was all about. To help make his dream come true, Walt handpicked the most talented artists and directors from his studio, people who knew how to set the scene for a movie, to help him set the scene and create story-inspired themes for his new family park. By creating Disneyland, Walt and his team created the theme park industry. And they made it happen by mixing imagination with engineering, which explains our name, Imagineering. Most people driving past this quiet, unmarked building have no idea this is where Disney magic is born. You definitely can't tell from the outside what's happening inside. And sometimes, neither can I. Walt Disney Imagineering has set the standard for theme park and resort design around the world. It's home to some of the most talented and creative people in the entire world. In fact, we have over 150 different disciplines busy making Disney magic, including model makers, artists, sculptors, writers, engineers, architects, sound and music experts, special effects designers, project managers, filmmakers, scientists, animators, landscape architects, and many more. We have a lot of interesting characters around here.
Oh, hi, Marty. Nice tie.
Hi, Mickey. See what I mean? Everything we do begins with the spark of an idea, and it takes a lot of talented and dedicated people to turn that spark into a park. Our Imagineering process usually starts with a brainstorming meeting where we have a lot of fun exploring ideas. Top secret. It's okay if you're with me. Hey, Tom, how's the brainstorming going?
Oh, hi, Marty. It's going great. Everybody's really got their thinking caps on today.
Told you it was fun. From here, the Imagineers add to an idea by approaching it from their own fields of expertise. As it is further developed, the idea begins to take shape with scale models and engineering mock-ups. If the idea is for a ride, show, or attraction, we put together storyboards to help us develop the sequence and script for our story. Everything we design is inspired by the story we're trying to tell. And believe me, there's nothing more exciting than bringing that story to life. Anyone can dream, but Imagineers can make a dream come true. And we've been doing it for 50 years. Walt Disney Imagineering was established to help Walt Disney create Disneyland. Since then, guided by the same design principles and attention to detail established by Walt Disney, we have designed and developed 10 more theme parks, numerous resort hotels, and many other dimensional entertainment venues. In fact, With our locations now all around the world, the sun never sets on a Disney theme park. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little behind-the-scenes tour of this very special and magical place. Imagineering Disney parks and resorts is a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. And every day brings something new. Even after 50-some years, I never know quite what to expect around here. Well, the first thing people usually want to know when they see that is where they can get one of those shirts that keep changing colors. That's a design challenge for you. Well, thank you, Dr. Lee. I really appreciate being here to be part of your design group. It's very exciting. And it's also interesting to note that, in fact, I was thinking on the way over here, all the anniversaries of the Disney parks around the world that are happening right now. Disneyland Paris was 20 on April 12th, and Walt Disney World was 40 last October 1st, and Epcot at Walt Disney World will be 30 on this coming October 1st, and Tokyo Disneyland will be 30 in March of next year, and that's pretty a lot of pleasure to bring to people around the world. And it's interesting that the Disney product has translated in so many different parts of the world, different languages, and so what I want to talk about today is what's up here, the best advice I ever heard. When I was asked to be the keynote speaker for a theme parks conference in Amsterdam last summer, I thought about what might be most meaningful for me to talk about. And I've done so much speaking at conferences, conventions, and seminars outside Disney and at Disney programs that I guess I could have easily pulled out something out of my files that would have been interesting, informative, and maybe even fun, especially one of my signature Mickey's 10 Commandments speeches. That's what the very first one was called, Mickey's 10 Commandments. And then I discovered that I had a lot more to say, so I created a second one. The second one was called Mickey's 10 More Commandments, and I added the theme, The Leader's Bible. And then the third edition built on that leadership theme with the key thematic phrase, leadership is earned and must be exercised daily. And then, for my fourth version, I changed the focus from leaders to team members by talking about followership, how to be a great team player and help your leaders succeed, because that's the only way great projects get done, by teams of people working together. Well, there are important principles in each of these talks, but now that I'm retired and have written a book about my experiences at Disney to be published next year by Disney Editions, I have an opportunity to be reflective about my life and my career. So I've done a lot of thinking about the people and the experience that have influenced me, and that's what I want to talk about today. And as I said, I called it the best advice I ever heard. I started out to focus on 10 ideas in this talk, as I had with my Mickey's 10 Commandments, but it didn't work because I had more than 10 commandments. In fact, the commandments have now grown to 40. And so today I have about 15 principles that I want to talk about with you. So let's get started. The first one, text from context is pretext. Professor Frederick Wellner at UCLA. Well, when I was a student at UCLA, I was fortunate enough to become editor of the student newspaper called the Daily Bruin. And perhaps this is why I remember so well the theories of one of the most popular teachers on the campus. For a journalist, or anyone who wants to play fair, making sure something you quote is not taken out of context is imperative. That's what Professor Frederick Wellner called pretext. Fantasy is another matter, but this theorem applies to your work too. Whatever you do, your audiences have a right to be assured that the true stories we tell are really true, and the facts have not been altered or taken out of context to become pretext. Failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And this is a quote from John Wooden, who was a legendary basketball coach at UCLA. And Coach Wooden was easily the greatest basketball coach in American university sports history. His teams won 10 national championships in a 12-year span. The next highest number of championships is a coach who won 4 in his whole lifetime. I was so fortunate to be the sports editor of the student newspaper for 2 seasons, writing about UCLA basketball and getting to know and observe Coach Wooden. I watched his organization of practices, his fair and equal treatment of team members, and his leadership style, how he motivated his team. I consider Coach Wooden one of my mentors for advice like this and so much more. Be quick, he told his players, but don't hurry. If opportunity knocks, be ready. And here's the ultimate advice. Make every day of your journey a masterpiece. Can't beat that. When you believe a thing, believe in it all the way. Have confidence in your ability to do it right. That's from Walt Disney. And in the, I guess you'd say in the kingdom of Disney, Walt Disney's quote about the 4 C's represents his recipe for creating magic. And this is it. I'll read it to you. Walt Disney's 4 C's. Somehow I can't believe there are many heights that can't be scaled by a man who knows the secret of making dreams come true. This special secret can be summarized in 4 C's. They are curiosity, confidence, courage, and constancy. And the greatest of these is confidence. When you believe a thing, believe in it all the way. Have confidence in your ability to do it right. And work hard to do the best possible job. Well, I discovered a poorly written version of this and rewrote it. And then I got Walt to record it in this way, so that this now has become the accepted quote. It pretty much says it all. Curiosity. Walt wanted to know how things worked. Once when some General Electric executives were coming for a visit, he had his experts explain all the technical aspects of the electronics and hydraulics for our audio animatronics figures. The next day, he personally took the GE executives through a classroom master course in the subject, adding some details that technicians haven't mentioned. Walt Disney was a creator of stories who loved the technology that made it possible to tell them. He really liked to use a line I wrote in the early 60s, quote, Imagineering is the blending of creative imagination with technical know-how, and that is the combination. Confidence. Walt sent a team to the big International Amusement Park conference in Chicago a year before Disneyland opened, 1954 would have been, and had them review his concept for Disneyland with the biggest and best in the amusement park business at that time. They all said he was nuts. Only one entrance? Crazy. Plant flowers? They'll get trampled. No carnival barkers? How will people know what's inside? Tell stories in an amusement park? Impossible. Tell your boss, they told Walt's emissaries, to save his money and leave this business to us. Well, when he heard this report, Walt loved it. He was sure he was on the right path with Disney. Walt's Park was not going to be one of those classic dying amusement parks of the 1950s. Courage. It's true that Walt Disney mortgaged his vacation home in Palm Springs, California, to build Disneyland. And of course, no one had ever created a full-length movie in animation before Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That took courage. Constancy. Walt was quoted so often about everything in life, you won't find his beliefs and principles changing over time. Consistent with the business being show business, one of my favorite Walt Disney constancies was this advice: you can educate people, but don't tell them you're doing it. In other words, first and foremost, we are in the fun business. One of my biggest challenges was writing Walt Disney's introduction to a film about our Florida project. It was actually the very last time Walt appeared on film, October 1966. Here's part of the introduction.
Welcome to a little bit of Florida here in California. This is where the early planning is taking place for our so-called Disney World project. Now, the purpose of this film is to bring you up to date about some of the plans for Disney World. But before I go into any of the details, I want to say just a word about the site of our Florida project. As you can see on this map, we have a perfect location in Florida, almost in the very center of the state. In fact, we selected this site because it's so easy for tourists and Florida residents to get here by automobile. Now, in larger scale on this map, our Florida land is located partly in Orange County and Osceola County, between the cities of Orlando and Kissimmee. And the important thing is that the Disney World is located just a few miles from the crossing point of Interstate 4 and Sunshine State Parkway. Florida's major highways carrying motors east and west and north and south to the center of the state. The sketches and plans you will see today are simply a starting point, our first overall thinking about Disney World. Everything in this room may change time and time again as we move ahead. But the basic philosophy of what we're planning for Disney World is going to remain very much as it is right now. We know what our goals are. We know what we hope to accomplish. And believe me, it's the most exciting and challenging assignment we've ever tackled at Walt Disney Productions. But as you can see on this master plan, the theme park and all the other tourist facilities fill just one small area of our enormous Florida project. According to this scale, I am 6 miles tall. Now that's 12 miles from here up to here, and the whole area encompasses 27,400 acres. That is 43 square miles, twice the size of the island of Manhattan. Here in Florida, we have something special we never enjoyed at Disneyland, the blessing of science. There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. And now, where do we go from these preliminary plans and sketches? Well, a project like this is so vast in scope that no one company alone can make it a reality. But if we can bring together the technical know-how of American industry and the creative imagination of the Disney organization, I'm confident we can create right here in Disney World a showcase to the world of the American free enterprise system. I believe we can build a community that more people will talk about and come to look at than any other area in the world. And with your cooperation, I'm sure this experimental prototype community of tomorrow can influence the future of city living for generations to come. It's an exciting challenge, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for everyone who participates. Speaking for myself and the entire Disney organization, we're ready to go right now.
So as a writer, you always worried that Walt would not follow the script. And now here's one of my favorite examples from a lead into one of his TV shows about Disneyland.
This is Johnny Hinch, who's in charge of this particular project. Hi, Joey. Oh, you've met before. Well, wonderful. He gets around, you know. He knows all the pretty girls. Johnny, will you explain to Juliet how what we're doing here, what this is all about?
Yes, Julie. This is a more detailed model of the Plaza Inn. Now, over here is the serving area. And as you select your food, you can see through the dining room to a large solarium at the end.
Then here's the beautiful solarium. Tell about that. Get down and take a peek.
This is another view of the dining area.
I can see it's going to be very lovely.
And through the arches, to your left, you can see this large, beautiful aviary.
With birds, singing birds, canary birds, finches in that beautiful cage, and live plants and things.
It's going to be very beautiful.
Seems like a wonderful place to eat.
It is. You mean you have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and Johnny, just be sure it looks as good as the model.
Always a challenge. Well, you just met John Hench. Disneyland is good for you. That's John was a senior vice president of design for Walt Disney Imagineering. Started with Walt Disney on Fantasia in 1939. He was a brilliant designer. Think Space Mountain and Epcot's Spaceship Earth. He was also a brilliant philosopher. This was the title, Disneyland is Good for You, of one of the best articles ever written about Disneyland. And here's one of my favorite John Hench quotes from that story. Quote, "If you were at a fair or an expo, everything clamors for your attention." And this is a design challenge. So you look and you try to make sense out of things. You try to decide and you constantly make a lot of judgments. But here in our parks, when we come to a point in the park that we know is a decision point, we make two choices. We try not to give guests 7 or 8 choices so they have to decide in a qualitative way which is the best of those. We just give them 2. We unfold things. One of the best books about design, if you ever want to read it, I know, is John Hench's. It's called Designing Disney, Imagineering and the Art of the Show. It's still available in paperback from Disney Editions in New York. Poor taste costs no more. Herbert Dickens Ryman, illustrator and designer of Walt Disney Imagineering. Well, there were 2 Herb Rymans. He was one of perhaps 2 or 3 artists Walt Disney treated as his favorites. And the one he chose literally begged because Herb was not working for Disney at the time to draw the very first overall drawing of Disneyland in 1953, 2 years before it opened. Herb Ryman also drew the first overall illustrations of Walt Disney World and Tokyo Disneyland. He created the concepts for their castles, made many of the key drawings for our Epcot shows and pavilions, and drew some of the early sketches of Disneyland Paris. But he was also an iconoclast who could poke holes in your comfort zone and loved doing it. Think about this statement, poor taste costs no more. Now, if you build something that's poorly thought out and designed, chances are pretty good it will cost just about as much as a well thought out, beautifully designed project. That's why Herb Ryman believed that poor taste costs no more. He wanted to be very clear that whatever we did, it should be designed and built the best way possible. That's why so much of Disneyland today is still much as it was 57 years ago at its opening. Herb Ryman wanted us always to be able to say, I did the best I know how. Or, as Walt said, work hard to do the best possible job. Yes, if is the language of a deal maker. No, because is the language of a deal killer. Harrison Buzz Price, economist and numbers man. Well, Buzz Price, who passed away last year at age 89, was the greatest numbers man in the history of the leisure, recreation, and amusement industry. Bob Rogers, chairman of BRC Imagination Arts, called him, quote, the mathematic Dumbledore, or Obi-Wan Kenobi of the attractions industry. Buzz created and set the standards for evaluating the economics of projects. He completed more than 3,000 studies for projects around the world. He also studied and recommended the actual sites for Disneyland in Anaheim, California, and Walt Disney World outside Orlando, Florida. All of us at Disney learned early on that you could not say no to Walt Disney. He would find someone willing to take a chance on a new idea or design. But Buzz Price knew that some ideas could be on shaky ground. So he invented the language, an axiom. Yes, if you do this, consider that, it could work. Buzz made it clear that yes, if is the approach of a deal maker. Creative people thrive on yes, if, while no because is the language of a deal killer. The message is clear. Try to find a way, a yes, if, to make a project viable. Practice always works because it knows no theory. Bob Gurr, designer extraordinary. Well, Bob Gurr was one of the greatest designers in the history of the attractions industry. First with the Imagineers when he designed, as he said, anything that moved at Disneyland. Main Street vehicles, Autopia cars, submarines, bobsleds, monorail trains. And then for Universal, he designed the great King Kong, all 30 feet tall and 13,700 pounds of him. And then the iconic pirate ship that once stood outside Treasure Island Hotel in Las Vegas for Steve Wynn. Bob Gurr absolutely understood that you could not say no to Walt Disney. Even though Walt thought Bob was an engineer, Bob had no engineering training. Bob says, quote, Walt was not interested in what kind of certification you brought with you to Disney. On paper, I was not qualified to do most of those early Disneyland vehicle designs. We taught ourselves how to do it. Practice, actual experience, figuring out what works through trial and error. Those methods proved more important than any theory. Here's an example of Walt Disney's approach from a video talk I recorded for the Disney Institute to introduce what is called the Disney difference.
Jose, wake up. It's showtime. Hello, I'm Marty Sklar, Executive Vice President, Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, and Imagineering Ambassador. Consider this. Nearly a decade after the opening of Disneyland, Walt was still working to achieve perfection in the 1963 opening of our first audio animatronics attraction, the Enchanted Tiki Room.
There was an experimental bird even that was made, which Walt was unsatisfied with it. He wanted the bird to breathe. And I said, people are not going to get this. This is too much perfection. He says, people can feel perfection. They may not know it intellectually, they can just feel it.
So, did Pierre really need to breathe? Probably not. But if Walt's quest for the best was to be achieved then, yes, breathing life into his tiki birds was an imperative. Today, as this legacy continues, extraordinary attention to detail is found throughout the Disney parks around the world. Really observe, for example, Expedition Everest at Walt Disney World's Animal Kingdom, which exceeds at every level the mission to entertain guests. Walt Disney Imagineers had a field day in outfitting the attraction's queue area with rich and exquisite details.
We Imagineers consider ourselves like authors of stories, and sometimes we write those stories with physical objects like Expedition Everest behind me. Now, part of the storytelling includes details like the props. We actually have over 8,000 props that were brought here from the Himalayas and its surrounding areas that adorn our queue lines here. Anything from pencils to the calculator to the stairs to even some of the bricks and even the nails that hang the pictures on the wall. You might say, why are these details important? Well, it's who we are as Imagineers, and ultimately, it's the Disney difference.
Was it worthwhile? Of course, because our guests have made it clear that it is this attention to detail that allows them to feel the perfection. Details like this. 99% of our guests may not notice this ladder purchased from an actual home in Bhutan. However, Subconsciously, our guests would notice that something was missing from the scene. They may not know what it is, but they will know that visually something is missing from our story. We call this the long shot and the close-up. It requires detail from a distance and, again, close-up inspection to bring an attraction to life. Some of the secrets behind our magic can be found in the timelessness of our experiences and some in the timeliness of our execution. We hope that these concepts and principles inspire each of you to breathe new life into your own world and your own organization.
Well, this is not one of the parrots, but Diego is on there. I always am amazed when I hear that because he must have sucked on helium before he spoke, because you can't talk that high. When Imagineering, what's wrong with contemporary? Roy O. Disney, chairman of the Walt Disney Company and Walt Disney's brother. When Imagineering was designing Walt Disney World in the late 1960s, we put placeholder descriptive names on the hotel themes we were designing. Originally, there were 5 concepts: Asian, Venetian, Persian, Polynesian, and contemporary. Only the last 2 were built. But John Hench and I regarded the name contemporary to be no name at all. It just suggested modern and up to date, in keeping with the hotel, which would have a monorail train running through the center, which it does. So we created a new name and a beautiful graphics package for a modern hotel on the shores of Bay Lake. We called it Tempo Bay and presented it to Disney chairman Roy O. Disney. He listened very politely, looked at our wonderful graphics, and replied, "What's wrong with contemporary?" Well, nothing, I guess, now that the 690-room contemporary resort at Walt Disney World is 40 years old and is still one of the most popular hotels in the world. The message, I guess, is keep it simple, stupid. Tell me a story. Don Hewitt, creator and executive producer of 60 Minutes on CBS television in the United States. Don Hewitt was one of the people who shaped our knowledge of the world in America in the second half of the 20th century. He was the creator and executive producer of the television program that was number 1 or number 2 in viewers for several decades when he retired. He was interviewed when he retired on his own program and was asked what his direction was to all the great newsmen and newswomen he worked with. "My inspiration was the Bible," Hewitt said. Now think about it. The Bible is full of stories that have endured for centuries. So I told our reporters 4 little words: tell me a story. Well, I'm proud to say that Don Hewitt was a great friend of our Epcot project at Walt Disney World. He came to the opening with the former mayor of New York City, Robert Wagner, and one of his reporters, Walter Cronkite. Here's what Walter Cronkite wrote about Epcot, quote, "The universality of Disney carries on after his death and continues in projects he put on the drawing board before he died. Epcot in Florida is a case in point, bringing together representatives of international industry, international commerce, and the governments of other countries in a permanent World's Fair. It perpetuates that theme of his, that we are indeed one people." You can go to a museum and see stuff. The great museums show you stuff, but tell you a story. This is Shaike Weinberg, the founding director of the United States Holocaust Museum, Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. Well, I first met Shaike Weinberg in Tel Aviv, Israel, in 1980, when we were designing a proposed pavilion for the state of Israel for Epcot. Shaike was the creator of one of the world's great museums, the Museum of the Jewish Diaspora, focusing on the dispersion of Jews to locations around the world, from Palestine and later Israel. I can still see the exquisite scale models of amazing Jewish synagogues, places of worship that existed in Europe before Hitler's Nazis destroyed many of them. Inspired by the models, we later visited a beautiful synagogue that still stands in Florence, Italy. The interesting thing about Shaiki Weinberg is that he was a theater man by background and thought like one. He saw the museum as a tool for telling a story, not just for showing authentic artifacts. Yet he knew the value of authentic artifacts to help tell these stories. He made the architects redesign the Holocaust Museum in Washington so he could have an authentic railroad boxcar to show how Jews and other minorities were transported to the concentration camps. And if you visit the Holocaust Museum, you'll never forget the room full of 4,000 Jews, all that remained of a Jewish community in Poland. I was so fortunate to become a friend of Shaiki Weinberg. He gave my wife and me a personal tour of the Holocaust Museum, and we met and exchanged ideas many times. He was a master storyteller. Never change a winning game, always change a losing game. Rod Laver, Grand Slam tennis champion. Well, here's one for you tennis players. I have a well-worn issue of Rod Laver's 1973 book, The Education of a Tennis Player. Not just any tennis player, but the first one to win the so-called Grand Slam. First, his native Australian Open. Then Roland Garros in Paris, the French Open. Then Wimbledon in London. And then the U.S. Open in New York. Laver credits another great champion, Bill Tilden, for this advice, which he completely followed. It's amazing, Laver said, how many players disregard this sound advice. They get ahead and neglect the message that got them there. They fall behind and keep failing with the tactics that put them down. Now, you don't have to be a tennis player to know how sound this champion's advice is for anything in life. When something works, don't forget it. We love the wind. Jackie Cooper, head pro at the La Quinta Tennis Club near Palm Springs. Well, you can tell what I love to do for exercise. I had the good fortune to play in 2 member pro tennis tournaments with Jackie Cooper, the pro at this great club in the California desert near Palm Springs. We won both championships, even beating John Austin and his partner, one of them. Now, John, by the way, won a Wimbledon mixed doubles title with his sister, Tracy Austin, the 2-time United States Open women's champion. When we played John Austin and his partner, the wind was blowing so hard that you could hardly keep a hat on your head. As we walked on the court, I asked my professional partner for instructions, expecting him to say, "Just get the hell out of my way." Well, all he said to me was 4 words: "We love the wind." In other words, conditions are what they are. They are the same for the guys or gals on the other side of the net. If they want to worry about it, let them. But for you and me, Jackie said, we love the wind. You're served, Marty. Life is full of strong breezes. Sometimes the wind blows in strange directions. You can't change it, so learn to live with the conditions that come your way. Many times you can make even the worst obstacles work for you. You can always change your plan, but only if you have one. Randy Pausch, professor at Carnegie Mellon University. Randy Pausch became one of the best-known academics in America in 2008 when he was dying of terminal cancer. A computer sciences professor at Carnegie Mellon University, Dr. Pausch made sure his last lecture, which he called Really Achieving Your Childhood Dreams, was not about dying. It was about overcoming obstacles. It was about seizing every moment. It was about living. I'm a big believer, Randy said, in to-do lists. In his last lecture to the students, which is one of the things he said, which was later shown on television and became a book by that name, lists help us break life into small steps, Randy advised. Have a plan. Break it into small steps. Take one step at a time. count me in. Despite his fatal illness, Randy Pausch lived his life and his teaching career to the fullest. We were very proud that Randy wore a shirt with an imaginary logo when he gave his last lecture. He had worked with our team as a consultant on the Disney Quest project for the Walt Disney World Village. Be optimistic. If you are not positive, who will be? Walt Disney. Promote sincerity, optimism, and enthusiasm. Coach John Wooden. Well, these two icons of their field never met as far as I know, but they spoke the same language. Leaders lead by example. They create a climate of trust in an organization. They make sure their own voice is not the only one they're listening to. They support risk-taking. They make sure you understand your role. Everyone has a job to do. And they share the joy of success. They know they did not do it by themselves. As John Hench taught me, it's not an I business, it's a we business, shaped and created by many hands. But it starts with a leader's optimism and enthusiasm, always a key foundation to build on. At the end of the day, Frank Wells, president of the Walt Disney Company, 1984 to 94. It's also the end of my speech. Frank Wells was Michael Eisner's executive partner for 10 years in the running of the Walt Disney Company. Frank was the president and chief operating officer. This metaphor made a big impression on me. It was a metaphor for how he wanted us to leave a meeting with a decision, with agreement on the next steps. It was the way he wanted to conclude negotiations with another company. Make the deal or don't make the deal, but walk away knowing that at the end of the day, you had given it your best shot, brought all the resources you need to the table. One morning when I was on vacation, Frank called me. "What are you doing, Marty?" he said. "Well, Frank, I'm in my bathing suit looking out at the Pacific Ocean. In fact, Frank, there's some dolphins swimming past right now." Well, Frank pretended not to hear me. He said, "How would you like to come to New York?" And I said, "Great, I'll be back from vacation next Monday." He says, "I need you for a meeting tomorrow morning," the voice on the telephone said. "But Frank," I told him, "my wife and I are going to the Hollywood Bowl tonight with some friends." "Okay," Frank replied, "but let your friends drive so they can take Leah, my wife, home. I'll have you picked up at intermission and get you to the airport in time to catch the midnight flight to New York." Well, of course, you know what the outcome was. I took the red-eye flight to New York from Los Angeles at midnight, arriving in New York just before 7 a.m. A driver met me and took me 10 minutes away to a waiting helicopter, which flew me to New Jersey, where another car met me and drove me to a nearby hotel. By 8 a.m., I had showered and shaved and was in Frank Wells' suite for a continental breakfast and my instructions. By 10 a.m., we were in a meeting with the president of AT&T, and Frank called on me for the concept and design information he wanted conveyed from the horse's mouth, so to speak, from the creative leader of Imagineering to the president of AT&T. By 11:30, I was out the door, and the process was reversed. Limousine to helicopter, helicopter back to New York, driver to the airport, a 1 p.m. flight back to Los Angeles, and then another limousine to another helicopter which flew me 90 kilometers to Orange County, where another driver met me and drove me to my vacation hideaway on the beach, looking out at the Pacific Ocean, where I arrived at 6:30 p.m., exactly 21 hours since I'd left the Hollywood Bowl, and about 30 hours since Frank Wells first telephoned me about my new travel plans. Well, at the end of the day, we made the deal. And I had to admit it, Frank did need me to be there, to say my piece, to put the deal over the top. At the end of the day, believe me, it was a very long day. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little trip along my own memory lane, listening to the best advice I ever heard. There was another one that I really appreciated, that I used to have a conference room where we'd pin up quotes from different people, and there was a wonderful one from George Lucas. We were having a debate about some show issue in Star Tours, our simulator show of the Star Wars stories, and somebody said, "There's too many cliches." And George said, "Don't avoid the cliches. They're cliches because they work." My own best advice to you is keep your eyes and ears open to all the great talents you meet along the way as you travel through your own life and career. And take notes. You can never tell when someone might ask you to make a keynote speech about your own experiences. If they do ask, remember to enjoy it and have fun, as I have. Because in our business, if you're not having fun in the fun business, you're in the wrong business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marty. I think this is a pretty amazing way of learning through your experience and trying to inspire us. Now, is some Q&A time?
Absolutely.
Perhaps I would also invite on stage another Disney personality, and I think it's been close friend of Hong Kong Design Center, for many different projects. Now, and I note that he will be, I think, leaving Hong Kong pretty soon. So this will be the last one. Okay. Now, and please welcome, the Disney creative director. Sorry, I lost the name. sorry. Theron Science. Thank you very much.
Theron's going to get all the hard questions.
That's fine with me.
He's leaving.
Well, first, thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for having us. It's always exciting to talk about what you love. We've spent quite a lot of time in Hong Kong recently talking about Imagineering, about design, Disney theme parks, and storytelling. We've presented Imaginations program for Hong Kong universities, faculty, and students, and I've been really excited about the response, and we're just launching another year, so being able to have a legend like Marty come and present and talk and about his life, and it's pretty unique. I know many of you may not really understand how unique of an opportunity it is to have somebody that worked directly with Walt Disney and to be able to share those experiences.
Still alive.
I didn't say that. Well, there's obviously some pretty big differences between the way that we create and culturally the way that we approach problem solving and education. And I know that we've spent a lot of time talking about those kinds of ideals. Perhaps you could elaborate a little bit about on Hong Kong Design Year and the approaches that are what's really happening in Hong Kong. The sort of renaissance, if you will, of creativity and design.
It's kind of interesting because at the beginning, at the opening remark, I said that we invite previously I did 2 other talks, architects to talk about the cityscape, planning, Millennium Park, the design for society type projects, and then we have Marty talking about the history, the insights and experience of the whole Imagineering concept and philosophy. I think that's pretty much we wanted to distill something during this Hong Kong Design Year, particularly. Everybody knows that we are going to have a new government very soon, right? So when the existing stage, when the government, as one of the 6 economic developments area identified for development, I think the government is very supportive of what we do, and so this is a golden opportunity that we must all capture, okay? But to capture that and also to get the message out to the public, and the public means the broad, the society, all of you, probably, you guys are the least, I would say, difficult, to pitch to, because we're studying design, we know the power of that, but there's a lot other hindrance and a long journey for us, to get to the business community, and even the users of design, a wider network of users of design. So the whole design year is kind of interesting coincidence, because this year we just literally have a whole year full of celebrations and events, and even the government is celebrating Hong Kong's return to mainland China. We're celebrating the 15th anniversary, and so we have a lot of programs, to appeal to the public, to students. We're throwing in the World Design Summer Camp in July, and we just literally seen 50 students came back from the study visit to Milan and Milan Fair. So we are spicing up the whole year with a lot of different things, a lot of different, maybe sessions like this that we can share, learn, think about, some of the quotes that Marty just shared with us, and how that relates to our everyday life and what we do, our environment, the living place. And I think it's great to be break away, from work sometimes and just listen and the messages across. So I think that's kind of like the spirit. But in fact, one thing I'd like to learn more, from the Walt Disney Imagineering is, and I said it, we are all converted, but how can we preach, to the broader community, to the people who thought or think that design is, I can get someone to do it, strategic use of design. How can we actually spread the message, to maybe tell a story and to the businessman?
Yeah, if you think about it, what in your life is not touched by some kind of design, and certainly we hope by good design, because it makes a big difference in our lives, but I think most people don't even think about how something reaches a commercial sale, almost anything you can name, but it isn't very well known. I know there's an organization in Southern California, for example, that publishes a report every year that emphasizes how much of the economy is influenced by art and design. It's quite staggering when you see the numbers, but we don't often put those numbers around it. We just assume, and most people don't really understand that it takes somebody sitting down at a drawing board or a computer screen to create an idea that maybe years later becomes a product that they enjoy in their home. It's a communication job, it really is.
I see that in talking with students and teachers in Hong Kong, the excitement that I see on some students' faces when they realize that design, as they have understood it, is really a much bigger world. It's beyond fashion, it's beyond watch design or architecture or bridge design, that there's this gigantic world of design that's available. And when you have companies and senior leaders from international companies that come and present and kind of open up these possibilities, it really seems that people start to get excited about how big of an industry design really is and how many aspects of our lives are touched by design.
Yeah, Dr. Lee and I were talking earlier. He's had the same experience, and probably a lot of you out there, when you said to your parents you want to be an artist, you want to be a designer, and they said, well, you'll never make a living doing that. And it's prevalent around the world that people think that way if they haven't been involved in and seen how much artists influence so much, designers influence so much that happens in our world. And I know it's a communication job. We started an art program in Los Angeles, in Southern California, and the first thing I did, I had to bring the parents of these young people as a weekend program to help them learn how to be better artists, to draw better. And the first thing we had to do is bring their parents into Imagineering and saying, there are 400 people in this building making their living as designers and artists and model makers and architects, and every one of them is someone who is influencing products, and it's influencing stories, that are influencing the way people enjoy themselves. And it took a couple of years before we finally started convincing people that they could trust us when with their young people in high schools in Southern California, to let them bring out their talent.
Interesting, because I see the audience that there are students here. Can we just have a quick show of hands and students? How many of you find yourself in kind of like a struggle? You have to explain to your parents or relatives the kind of things that you're learning and trained to be a designer. Ever face any challenge or problems? Yeah, I see some hands.
Lots of smiles.
I take it as
everybody understands.
Well, interesting. A few days ago, I was at a dinner, with Patrick Woodruff, the UK lighting designer involved with a lot of stage setting and big shows, rock stars, including the latest Lady Gaga, concert things in Hong Kong. And at the dinner, we were just casual, talking about things, and then he kind of saying something like, when a designer is no longer thinking and acting like a designer, great opportunity comes out. Yeah, when a designer thinks and acts more than a designer, then lots of business opportunity, project opportunity comes out. Now, funny enough, I was late for the dinner, so never be late, because it took me quite some time to get connected, some of the talking points before. But then I realized that this guy is amazing. I thought, because we also have a Consul General in the audience, and then this guy was literally just talking diplomacy. A designer, literally talking diplomacy. And I thought, what the heck, am I in the wrong place, in the wrong dinner? But he's so resourceful. Obviously, he's world-renowned. All the big shows around the world, he's involved in advising the light setting and everything. And his knowledge and his skill set, and basically, he's just resourceful. Okay, and so suddenly, I thought about Design Center, because we are design promotion agency. We do a lot of design education thing, preaching to the business community, business leaders, and it sometimes still lacks some common language. Yeah. So your experience and how to get through them.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we do things that don't seem to be part of the design process, but when you're selling an idea, that's part of the design process too. And I'll tell you one story, that when we were trying to get countries to participate in Epcot in the Walt Disney World, we had all the ambassadors from Washington, including the Russian ambassador, Anatoly Dobrinin at the time, and the Swedish ambassador was a tennis player. Well, I was supposed to be the best Disney tennis player, so I had to play tennis with this man. And the match went to 6-all, and we played a tiebreaker. And the tiebreaker went to 6-6. And the next point came up, and I said, do I win this point? Or do I just throw it and hopefully they'll sign a contract? And I finally decided, even though I could have won, I decided, no, I can't do this, because he'll be mad, and then we'll never see him again. So I figured when he went back to Sweden, he probably told everybody he beat John McEnroe and beyond Borg. So you do a lot of things to sell and communicating. I think designers are great communicators, because it's the only way you can sell your idea. You have to be able to, whether it's in a drawing, whether it's verbally, you have to be able to be a salesman for your ideas, because you're in competition. You're in competition with other people with great ideas. Who's going to win? the person who can not only do the design that works for the problem, whatever the issue is, but also can communicate that. Very important.
I see in the audience that that the new director of the Institute of Advanced Education from PolyU is here, and there are schools around the world in America. Many of the Ivy League business schools are teaching executive of design thinking. You know, some of the knowledge and skills and about design planning and things like that. So I guess that there's something interesting in the design training, that helps pull the many different abstract things together and as you said, maybe help realize them. And so I guess that's the trend that we have to cherish and maybe spend a little bit. But Theron, coming back to I know you're leaving Hong Kong but with your experience in Hong Kong, we have a theme park in Hong Kong, and you employ a lot of staff, local staff, and from the cultural perspective, even in Hong Kong, maybe the operation is different from America, but you still require a lot of creative staff to help. And do you see any cultural differences? Because our educational system will be different, the cultural background of families and upbringing are different. Care to say something about that?
Definitely, it's a really great point, and I would say that probably some of my greatest education since coming here has been from my local colleagues who grew up in the education system here, graduated, learned about art and design, and were given the opportunity to join the Disney company, Imagineering, to design and build Hong Kong Disneyland. And they're sharing the cultural differences with me, really expressed all of the things that they learned. And they really had to be given the freedom to make mistakes. They had to be encouraged to take risks. They had to be encouraged to be curious. And even though that was outside of their maybe nature of growing up, they embraced those ideals because it's values that we have in our company. And we believe that all great designers have those traits. So once they really embraced those ideals and those traits, and they began to explore, they really blossomed. Very, very proud of our conceptual designer, Akwan Chan. You may have heard me talk before. She's a graduate of Hong Kong Design Institute. Built Hong Kong Disneyland, was on my team for a few years, and took a position in Glendale at our headquarters in California, working on the Shanghai project. So we always try to talk about her because it's such a fantastic success story that she would be taken from our team to the U.S. to use the expertise that she has, the cultural expertise, and blended with the design sense to, create venues in our Shanghai park, and then eventually she'll move there and work on building them. So it does happen. It can happen. With all of the work and interest that the Walt Disney Company has in this part of the world, and all of the expansion that's coming, one of the things that we've always talked about is the need for local talent on our teams, because when we tell the stories that we tell, they have to be relevant to the audience in which we're telling them.
Well, I think that's a really good point. I think companies around the world are really interested in Chinese designers because of exactly what Theron said, that you have to understand the culture you're going into. Otherwise, you can make a lot of mistakes. But the other thing I wanted to mention was Theron mentioned the risk-taking. When I was first learning to write things for Walt Disney, I found a little book that was called Words to Live By. And in that book were a lot of famous people who wrote one page with one message for people. And Walt Disney's was called Take a Chance. Take a Chance. And it was about a boy in a Midwest town Midwest America, where Walt Disney grew up, that kind of town. And he always wanted to play in a band, a marching band. but he didn't play an instrument. But one day there was a parade, and he decided to get a trombone and march in the parade. And as the parade was going on, the bandmaster realized these awful sounds were coming from this one young man playing the trombone. And the bandmaster said, "Who is making all those terrible noises?" And he raised his hand and he said, "Why are you making those terrible sounds? It doesn't blend in with anything." And when the boy said, "Well, I didn't know. I never tried before. Never tried to play before." And Walt's message was, "I hope I never get too old to march in a parade and take a chance." And, you know, that's, I think, the way people make the big moves, the big steps in anything in life is by risk-taking, taking a chance, raising your hand when everybody else is keeping it down. So maybe that's a good lead into the questions. We'll find out who's willing to raise their hands.
Theron, Marty, and I can talk infinitely, here. So I think I need you, to start, thinking about any things and raise your hands. I see a hand. Thank you. You have a mic for this one. I'm sorry. I'll let the one at the top first, and then
And I'm Victor from BIT College, and I want to ask that because you guys and your teams work at California, the headquarters of Imagineering, and how can you guys jump out the frame to think about more things that can fill into the Disneyland without Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck, and how can you put in the new things in the park and build it up more improvement?
Just to repeat your question, I believe you're asking how can we continue to build things, design things in our our parks, maybe not just Hong Kong Disneyland, but all of our parks, but have those ideas not just focus on characters. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, the first thing is about great stories. Stories are the foundation for everything we do, and without a great story, we don't do it. And and the characters are part of the stories, and they all came out of stories. So that's a foundation. And so we're always looking for great stories, like the Pixar people tell great stories, and that's the first thing we work on.
I think maybe a good example is Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates was an attraction that was not supported by a movie franchise or characters that were shown on television. It was developed as a wholly original concept and story for Disneyland. So successful was the story and the attraction that, of course, it's been recognized in different incarnations in our parks all over the world. And the attraction story itself inspired a movie franchise, and that's probably what you guys are most familiar with is Captain Jack Sparrow and the characters from the film. So I always find it very fascinating that an attraction, a story, inspired a movie, and then that movie became so popular with the new generation that it then re-inspired overlaying those characters onto our original attraction so that it could be relevant for new audience members.
And I want to ask this, I know Marvel is your brand in Disneyland, right? And would you guys build up a Marvel park for out to our lives, like a live Iron Man with fly in the sky, or...
Is this one of those hard questions that you want me to take?
I told Theron he was going to get all the hard questions.
I was going to turn to the person next to me and give the hard questions. The buck stops here, as they say. I think when you read in the newspapers and you see in the news that the Walt Disney Company purchased Marvel, I think you can begin to understand the excitement that we would have as designers as being able to play in the world of Marvel storytelling, like we would with the films and characters and stories of our Pixar films that you've seen. We've explored many ways of bringing those two-dimensional worlds and characters to life in 3 dimensions in our theme parks. I think that you would want to be able to see that in the future with Marvel as well. We aren't announcing anything, but it's one of those properties that we would certainly love to explore in the future.
And I want to ask one more question, because Marvel is a comic for the adults, and how could your Imagineering team communicate with them to bring up something that is appropriate to kids and adults to appreciate the products that you work it on?
Well, my learning process was so much from Walt Disney, and he used to say, adults are only kids grown up. So, and his point was, you don't play down. You don't play down. You make things that are not for kids. We don't do things that are for kids. Walt Disney did one attraction in Disneyland the second year we were open. It was called Midget Autopia, and it was a ride that only kids could go on. Adults couldn't go on it with it, and he realized that it violated the whole reason he built Disneyland, which was the fact that he wanted something he could do with his own daughters, where parents and children could do things together. So you don't play down. And think about all of you. I mean, I watch my grandkids. When I didn't do or understand the things that they do when they're 10 years old now, maybe I matured slowly, but the fact is that people are growing up, children are growing up a lot faster today, and a lot of it, of course, is the speed of communication and access to communication.
If you don't mind, introduce yourself.
Oh, sure. I'm Carrie Chen. I teach advertising at Hong Kong Baptist University. My question is, I love the quote, I love the wind. So Hong Kong, the Disney park obviously have the limitation of space. So how did you solve the problem, or did you make things smaller here, or how did you cope with this limitation?
No, we actually have quite a bit of space, and the new attractions that are opening this year and next year will open up a lot of space. So I don't think space was a limitation. The budget was a limitation. I know that so many things were criticized by the government, but the deal that was made with the government was actually gave us not enough money to do the park big enough. Now there's so much expansion. The Toy Story attraction, the It's a Small World that came in 3 or 4 years ago, and the new attractions, which is a very big area that is going to expand the park, more room for people, and it will make a big difference.
Just to follow on, if you didn't know, Walt Disney Imagineering is responsible for all of the property worldwide for the Disney parks and resorts. So every resort, every theme park in the world that is a Disney park, our teams manage the property. So we really know where we're going to expand, how much land we have to expand, what particular part we're going to expand next, and we maintain that really literally 10 years or more in the future. So we really do know where we're going to go, and there is plenty of land at the Hong Kong Disneyland site to expand. And in fact, one of the most exciting things we've been doing, obviously since opening, is planning, strategically planning for the future, how we're going to grow, ideas for where we're going to expand, and what we're going to do. And that's always really, really exciting to see that come together.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Andrew Hogue. I'm from Head of Strategy at an advertising agency called DDB. Part of my job is encouraging creativity, and I love the 4 C's that you're talking about, Marty. And I think to some degree you can teach constancy, you can teach confidence, but the hardest thing is teaching curiosity. And is that something? How exactly do you guys encourage curiosity?
Most really good designers that I've worked with want to know about everything. And when they travel, they always go to the museums, or they hear about something new. They go to. I used to have a weekly lunch with my top creative people, and the first thing I'd start is, who saw something new this week that really that excited you? Whether it was a play, whether it's somebody read a book, went to a museum show, heard about something and a new idea, and it's very amazing how much you could, and as an organization, you could learn so much more by sharing than you can as an individual. But for me, I always said that there's two ways to look at a blank piece of paper. One way, you see a blank piece of paper, it's the most frightening thing in the world. You know why? Because you have to make the first mark on it. The other way to look at it is it's the greatest opportunity in the world because you get to make the first mark on it. And if you think about it that way, I think you do become very curious about what's happening in the world, new ideas that are going on, new technology. I did when Walt died, they did a film about him, and they asked me to say something, and I said, this was a man who had one foot in the past and one foot in the future. He had a foot in the past because he loved the nostalgia of the old days, and he had one foot in the future because he loved the technology, because the technology was an enabler. It was a way of giving him an opportunity to do things that he couldn't do last year. I mean, when we did Space Mountain for the first time in Walt Disney World, it was actually 6 or 7 years after it was first designed, because we couldn't figure out, computer systems were not sophisticated enough at that time, 1965, to keep the cars separate inside the mountain. Well, 6 or 7 years later, we were able to do it. There's an attraction at Disneyland, Disney's California Adventure, and at Disney's Hollywood Studio called Toy Story Midway Mania. It's got 143 computers backstage talking to each other. And you couldn't do that 10 years ago. So you got to stay curious. You got to want to know more, and if you are, I think you'll be a much better designer, because you'll be in touch with things that are going on that you wouldn't have thought about if you hadn't been to.
If I could just add, I think one thing that I always encourage our designer team to do is, the world has really gotten to be a very small space in a short span of time. And as Marty said, technology is one of those tools that has done that. And what I find by talking with most design professionals, no matter what field they're in, most design professionals stay in touch with the field. If they're designing automobiles, if they're an ad agency, if they're a marketing, rep or some kind of design professional graphics, they're in tune with that industry. They research magazines. They know who's who in that particular world. Well, that's curiosity. I always try to encourage people to be curious beyond your own discipline. Be interested in things that don't necessarily drive the type of design discipline that you're in. Research electronics, look at architecture, be inspired by a great play or a movie or books, or take a visit to the country and be inspired. Those types of exercises really keep your mind open to new things and don't get you locked in.
Yeah, that little piece of Walt Disney introducing the Plaza Inn with John Hench. When John was given that assignment to design that restaurant, he said to Walt Disney, I don't know the first thing about restaurants. And Walt said, well, don't look at me. You go find out. And John took a course in restaurant design, not restaurant design, but in restaurant management at UCLA. First thing, and he became an expert at what went behind the scenes in the restaurant. So even before he started the design, he understood what the need was for the chefs and the people running the restaurant. And it was the only way he could design what he designed.
We have a question right up front. Yeah, in the front row.
Oh, there was one other thing. One time, same man, John Hench, I think he was working on Fantasia, and he said to Walt Disney, "You know, Walt, I think all the male dancers are gay." And Walt said, "How do you know that?" And John said, "Well, I really don't." And so the Bolshoi Ballet was in Los Angeles at the time, and Walt arranged for John to spend 2 weeks backstage. And he came back and he said, "I've never seen more athletic people. People there." He says, "I didn't meet one gay person." He said, "They're just athletic and wonderful performers. Perception is, sometimes we don't get the story right."
Okay. Thank you. Thanks to Dr. Lee's acknowledgement just now. My name is Tony Shea from Purdue's Institute of Advanced Education. I have a question. Basically, lots of us, including myself, has been inspired or educated without knowing it by Disney's story and quality design over so many years. So there's a question facing by a lot of companies. So my quick question would be, how does Disney will be able to continue to maintain or manage such a culture for quality design and also innovation in your company?
Well, I'll start with the first piece about education. One of my favorite quotes from Walt Disney was, "You can educate people, but don't tell them you're doing it." Not in our business. If you're in the fun business, you don't want to say, "This is good for you. This is education." And it's about fun, but you sneak in all the other things. And when we were designing Epcot, which was about information, about energy, about food, about transportation, so many things like that, I said to people, "There's no way you can tell a whole story here about any of these subjects. We only have a half an hour," whatever it was. I said, what you can do is do turn-ons. Get people to want to know more. You can excite them about it. Then they'll want to go out and find more. Of course, it was a little difficult with some of our management. My boss, Card Walker, or E. Card Walker, who was the chairman of the company, when I told him we were going to, in the land pavilion, we were going to grow food. Actually, we have a wonderful area that grows food from around the world. And he said, "Well, how are you going to entertain people if you're growing food?" And I said, "Card, it's going to be very exciting. You'll be watching lettuce grow." He wasn't excited about that answer. But if you go to Walt Disney World now, take that boat ride. It's called Listen to the Land. It's one of the most exciting adventures, experiences you will have. In fact, we do a walking tour through the whole area because it's so exciting. By the way, I have one other thing, and I'm not answering the question, but when we did the mock-up of the whole area, we did about a third of the whole ride, and people at University of Arizona were working with us, and when we were all through, we were all excited about it. And they said, "Oh, okay, where do we put the bees to pollinate all the food?" And I said to the director, Carl Hodges, I said, "Carl, we're going to have real people coming through here. You don't use bees to pollinate." He said, "How are we going to pollinate all this?" And I said, "You know what? We're in show business. We're the story people. You're the expert. You tell me how you're going to pollinate." They actually hand pollinate every thing that's growing in that whole area. And it doesn't take them that long. It takes them 5 hours a week or something like that. What was the question? It's a
a great story.
Just you keep it going.
I think the other thing that's really important is how do you continue to encourage a culture of creativity. And one of the things that, especially in our organization here, is very different from other organizations in Hong Kong. I'm constantly talking to our human resources team about the way that we communicate within my team, and because we don't have a structure that's like this, we have a structure that's like this. It's very lateral. I could pick up the phone and call the CEO today on my mobile, and talk to our creative leaders, and that kind of access and communication and free flow of information is really, really critical. As Marty said, there's over 140, 150 different disciplines within our organization, and many of those disciplines, if you laid them all out on a sheet of paper, you would realize that in the outside world, some of those disciplines are at odds with each other, but we all work together to build something that at the end of the day becomes quite magical. So that level of communication and being able to talk outside of your own discipline with a singular focus, the only way that I think that could really happen is in a place where that kind of communication is really encouraged.
Yeah, I think it's what one of my mentors, John Hedge, told me almost the first day I was at Imagineering, and I had it in my talk. It's not an I business, it's a we business. And if you convince people that all these hands are going, so many different hands are going to make the product better because they bring their own skill and creativity to it. And you have to accept the fact that your name is not going to be on the product. I always said there's only one name on the door to this day at Imagineering, it's Walt Disney. So we're not going to get our names in lights, but you get your satisfaction out of seeing the enjoyment that people have in being able to go through these experiences of parks. And most of it, I realized this was really brought home to me at one point when the aerospace business started to go down in the United States, and we started to hire engineers who were making weapons in engineering in the companies they worked with. And all of a sudden, and they didn't want their families to know what they did. They're making things that kill people. They came to work for us, and all of a sudden, they were making things that they could take their kids to and watch them have fun. It's that kind of culture that you realize you're bringing enjoyment to people. You want to be there to watch people laughing and having fun in what you do. It's a great satisfaction, right?
I'm John Lowe from the Hong Kong Design Center. I may be sounding like a recruitment agency for Walt Disney.
I'm retired. You can't recruit me.
We have many students here today in the audience, and they may one day would like to become Imagineers. Now, what are the major characteristics that you are looking for in good Imagineer?
What are you looking for when you hire somebody?
John is asking for the students.
I think you've heard a lot today, and certainly in the past when we've talked about requirements and things, and I think when you really simplify it, we were looking for people who are passionate.
Yeah. That's definitely the word I was going to use. How do you find that? You don't know that right away. But sometimes you do. The Imaginations program that you have here, you find out a lot about the participants.
That's right. The thing about passion, that it really excels people beyond their own level of experience or skill. In anything that you pursue, design especially, you're figuring out problems. You're sorting through issues, and good design solves problems and moves business forward, right? So there's bound to be times, no matter what you decide to do in your design career, where you're going to encounter some real challenges. and it's going to be late nights, and it's going to be top ramen noodles for dinner, and you're not going to see your family. The thing that drives you through that is passion. It's not skill, although that contributes, and it's not necessarily experience. And I can guarantee you it's not the money that you're going to be making. It's passion. And that's really, I think, the thing that we look for the most is who are the people that just absolutely love what they do. They, you know, Marty said we work in the fun business, and if you're not having fun, it's the wrong business. And it's really true. That contentment is the thing that drives you. Of course, we're looking for people who are skilled and who have experience. That's a given. But so are every other organization. We're looking for people who are not afraid to take risks, who are not afraid to step out of a comfort zone, certainly not afraid to try new things. You know, packing up from Hong Kong and moving to Los Angeles and working with people, many people you've never met before in a completely different culture. You know, for a Hong Kong person, that might be a little bit daunting, but I can tell you she's having a blast. You know, a blast doing it. So hopefully that answers your question, Joe.
Something maybe related to the economy. If we're looking for the most of the Disney themes around the world, concentrate in maybe, let's say, the economy, good situation countries, but not in some other countries. This may be revenue good for the Disney theme. My suggestion, actually, because we're talking about innovation and the future, why not Disney think that a mobile theme for the Disney, going for really for the needed people, for example, in Africa or in other countries, so you can share those people. Because if we're looking for really about the ticket of the Disney, it's very expensive. It's not allowed for some people that really want to make funny with the your theme. So this is my suggestion for you.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
My name is Fawaz. I doing my PhD in Poly.
Oh, thank you. I think it's kind of important thing that you know, when we're talking a lot about design, you know, Disneyland obviously is a business proposition, but also kind of like fit people's life. But certainly there are lots of, you know, applications that designers or design projects can apply, reach out to solve other problems.
Well, I can tell you this, that there's, I can tell you in the United States, there's no company, in fact Disney's been right at the top of the list of volunteerism, the number of people, they call it the volunteers, you know. But Disney's been at the top of that, doing a lot of things for a variety of communities, building things, contributing, particularly where we have major organizations. That means Orlando, Florida, Los Angeles, New York, and I think that same idea is better. I know Theron is doing a project here in Hong Kong that came to me when I was still active, and he's been involved in this for 4 years now, right? And nobody knows about it because he hasn't talked about it. But we do a lot of things like that behind the scenes that no one ever knows about. There's an organization in the United States called Make-A-Wish Foundation. Young people, particularly young children dying of cancer and things like that. You never hear about that because we don't do any publicity of it, but we do it. I know the cruise lines, for example. Carl Holtz, who runs the Disney Cruise Lines, he was in a boys' club when he was growing up. He does so much for boys and girls clubs in the Orlando area. I mean, it's the kind of thing where you don't talk about it because so much of it is, if you do, you know, you're going to get even more than the thousands of requests we already get, which we do constantly. I mean, I have somebody called me a couple couple of months ago, and I put them in touch with the Disney people. He runs an organization that tries to help families where one of the parents dies while the kids are still young. It's called late stage cancer, something or other. And you know, these people do such great work, and so many Disney people are involved in it without talking, really quite a bit.
I think maybe just to follow on a little bit with what Marty said, you know, engaging our community is a really critical part of the Walt Disney Company's outreach. Just building something, a business in a particular community, and then making money off of that community and never contributing back is not what we're about. I think from the very beginning, Walt really led it by example. I mean, contributing to Cal Arts and giving back to the community, creating programs, and reaching out. I know locally here we've been involved with Habitat for Humanity, many different NGOs that really go right into the homes of people and really attend to those people right where they need to be attended to. It's one thing to be in the theme amusement business and in the business of making people have fun, but at the end of the day, it's a business. Our business, like others, is populated with people, and people have needs. So it's really a part of our corporate citizenship to really encourage volunteerism. One of the things I know on our team that we've tried to do recently is to volunteer by using our expertise in a unique way. For example, we last year reached out to Yakin School in Chongchoi and was able to go there and paint murals with the kids and talk about creativity, and we donated computers and those kind of things. That, I think, is important, because it's not just helping, it's not just being in your community and making a difference, but it's engaging with the community. Not showing up with a bucket of paint and improving, but really talking with your community and engaging them, showing them that it's fun to be creative. It's helpful in those ways. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's a great satisfaction too. I did a project which was all done at lunch hour. The lobby of Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. We designed the whole thing and contributed all our time to it. And people just wanted to do it. And you find that Disney was actually financially and artistically the biggest contributor to the new Children's Hospital in Orlando, Florida, because a lot of artwork was done by our Imagineering team in Florida, where Theron is going back. So you just don't talk about those kind of things. You do them.
My colleague just reminds me that time's up, for this session. Now I understand fully, the title of the talk, the best advice I ever had, and surely, during this period of time, we had many of such advices coming through, and some of what we talked about, to stay curious and be curious, I think seems to be something that particularly rings dear to every one of us here. So I would say thank you very much, Marty. Thank you very much, Theron. Thank you very much.